Tonight, we are going to a cold and wind-swept plain in southern England, a place where the grass is short and the sky is enormous and the wind never quite stops blowing. We are going to Salisbury Plain, and there, in the middle of that open landscape, stands something that has no right to be there. A ring of massive stones, some weighing as much as 25 tons, arranged with a precision that still baffles engineers today. Standing in the same place they have stood for 5,000 years, waiting, as they always have, for someone to finally understand them. Stonehenge is not one thing. It is the result of multiple phases of construction, carried out over roughly 1,500 years, from around 3000 BCE to 1500 BCE. The earliest phase was a circular earthwork, a ditch and bank, with no stones at all. Then came the first small bluestones from Wales, then the massive sarsen sandstone trilithons, the iconic pairs of upright stones with lintels across the top. Then rearrangements, additions, subtractions. Stonehenge, as we see it today, is the final chapter of a very long conversation between a people and their landscape. The people who built Stonehenge left no written records. We know them only through what they left in the earth, their burials, their tools, their cremated remains. They were Neolithic farmers, growing wheat and barley, raising cattle, living in small communities across the chalk-down land of southern Britain. But they were not isolated. Recent isotope analysis of human remains at Stonehenge shows people who were born in the Alps, in the Mediterranean, in Scotland. Stonehenge drew people from across the known world. It was, from the very beginning, a place of gathering. The smaller stones at Stonehenge, the Bluestones, weigh between 2 and 5 tons. They came from the Preseli Hills in West Wales, 250 kilometers away, across rivers, through forests, over hills. Researchers believe they were moved partly by water, floated on wooden rafts along the coast, and partly overland on wooden sledges and rollers. The logistics of this operation for a society with no wheeled vehicles and no metal tools is staggering, and nobody yet fully agrees on exactly how they did it. The large sarsen stones, the ones that form the iconic trilithon arches, are a different matter entirely. They weigh between 20 and 25 tons each. They came from Marlborough Downs, roughly 25 kilometers north of Stonehenge. Their transport required a different scale of organization. Experimental archaeologists estimate that moving a single sarsen stone to Stonehenge would have taken around 500 people, pulling for weeks. The dressed surfaces of the stones, smoothed and shaped before erection, show the work of skilled craftspeople, not unskilled laborers. One detail about Stonehenge is rarely discussed but remarkable. The lintels, the horizontal stones that sit across the tops of the uprights, do not simply rest in place. They are locked. Each lintel has 2 sockets carved into its underside, mortise holes, which fit precisely onto tenon knobs carved into the top of each upright. A joinery technique used in woodworking, translated into stone, at a scale that required hauling the lintel stone to the top of a 5-meter upright in 2500 BCE, without cranes, without ropes stronger than twisted plant fiber, without metal. Stonehenge does not stand alone. It is the center of a sacred landscape, a vast complex of monuments, burial mounds, processional avenues, and earthworks spread across kilometers of Salisbury Plain. The avenue, a corridor of parallel ditches and banks, extends 2 miles from Stonehenge's entrance toward the River Avon. Hundreds of burial mounds cluster around the monument. Durrington Walls, a massive circular earthwork nearby, once enclosed a settlement of perhaps 4,000 people. Stonehenge was not a monument in a landscape. It was a landscape organized around a monument. The area around Stonehenge contains one of the highest concentrations of Neolithic and Bronze Age burial mounds in Britain, over 300 barrows within sight of the monument. The bodies buried in them were not ordinary people. Isotope analysis shows many came from far away. Their grave goods include gold, amber, and objects from continental Europe. One extraordinary individual, buried near Stonehenge around 2300 BCE, known as the Amesbury Archer, was found with the richest Bronze Age grave goods ever discovered in Britain. He had been born in the Alps. He made it to Stonehenge to die. Stonehenge is precisely oriented. On the morning of the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises exactly over the heel stone, and its first light shines directly through the entrance of the monument and into the center of the circle. This is not an accident. The alignment is too precise to be coincidental. The builders deliberately placed the monument to frame this single astronomical event, and every year, as it has for 5,000 years, the solstice sun still rises in exactly the right place, still shining through the gap they left for it. But some researchers now believe the winter solstice was even more important to the builders than the summer one. On the shortest day of the year, the sun sets in the southwest, precisely aligned with the main axis of Stonehenge when viewed from the avenue entrance, and the evidence from Durrington walls suggests that the great feasts and gatherings at Stonehenge happened in midwinter, not midsummer. The monument may have been a place where people came to mark the darkest point of the year and watch the sun begin its return, to witness the promise of light returning to the world. The sun is not the only celestial body encoded at Stonehenge. The monument also appears to track the movements of the moon. At its extreme northern and southern rising points, the moon aligns with specific stones and gaps in the circle. More remarkably, the 56 Aubrey holes, a ring of pits just inside the outer earthwork, may function as a computer for predicting lunar eclipses. The astronomer Gerald Hawkins first proposed this in 1963, that prehistoric people used Stonehenge to count the 18.6-year cycle of the moon, predicting eclipses years in advance. Not everyone agrees, but the mathematics are difficult to dismiss. Medieval writers knew something strange stood on Salisbury Plain, and they explained it the way their age explained inexplicable things. Geoffrey of Monmouth, writing in the 12th century, said Stonehenge was built by the wizard Merlin, who magically transported the stones from Ireland at the command of King Aurelius Ambrosius. The stones, Geoffrey explained, had been originally brought to Ireland from Africa by giants for their healing properties. The legend is not accurate, but it is interesting. Giants, magical transport of stones, healing power. Ancient stories sometimes preserve a distorted memory of something real. And then, as with every great ancient mystery, comes the alternative question. The standard explanation, Neolithic people with wooden sledges and plant fiber ropes, is possible. It has been demonstrated in small-scale experiments, but scaling those experiments up to the actual stones has proven extraordinarily difficult. A full-scale attempt to move a sarsen stone, using replica Neolithic methods in 1997, failed. The stone barely moved. Some researchers look at Stonehenge, at the precision of the astronomy, the weight of the stones, the joinery technique, and wonder whether the people of 2500 BCE had assistance, or knowledge, from somewhere not yet accounted for. Recent excavations have revealed something unexpected. The cremated remains and skeletal material found around Stonehenge show an unusually high proportion of people who were ill or injured, showing healed fractures, skeletal abnormalities, evidence of long-term illness. And many of them, isotope analysis shows, came from far away. Researchers now believe Stonehenge may have functioned as a healing sanctuary, a place people traveled to from across Britain and beyond, seeking cure or comfort from the monument's presumed magical or divine power. A prehistoric Lourdes, a place of last hope. Stonehenge is not alone. Britain and Ireland contain over 1,000 surviving stone circles, from the tiny 5-stone rings of Cornwall to the vast ring of Brodgar in Orkney, including those that have been destroyed. Archaeologists estimate there were once over 3,000. The stone circle was not an eccentric local invention. It was a tradition, a way of marking sacred space that spread across the British Isles over 2,000 years. And it did not stay in Britain. 25 kilometers north of Stonehenge sits a monument that most people have never heard of, yet which is arguably more impressive than its famous neighbor. Avebury is the largest stone circle in the world. Its outer bank and ditch enclose an area of 11.5 hectares. Within that outer ring are two smaller stone circles, and running into the monument from two directions are long avenues of paired standing stones. The modern village of Avebury sits inside the monument. People live between the stones. Some stones were toppled in the Middle Ages by villagers who feared them. Others were used as building material. And still the monument endures. The impulse to arrange stones in circles was not uniquely British. In Senegal and Gambia, over 1,000 stone circles, built between 300 BCE and 1600 CE, cover an area of 35,000 square kilometers. More stone circles in this region than exist in all of Britain. In Ethiopia and Sudan, ancient circular stone monuments punctuate the landscape. In the Americas, medicine wheels, large stone patterns on the ground, appear across the Great Plains and into Canada. In Arabia, the Harat Khaybar volcanic field contains thousands of geometric stone structures, visible only from the air. The circle, it seems, is the oldest human geometry. In recent years, archaeoacoustics, the study of sound in ancient spaces, has revealed something unexpected about Stonehenge. Inside the original complete stone circle, sounds behave differently than they do outside it. The stones created echoes, reverberations, and resonances that would have made voices, drums, and music sound amplified and transformed. Some researchers believe Stonehenge was not only an astronomical instrument and a healing sanctuary, but also a sound chamber, a place where the human voice or the sound of drums was made to feel larger than itself, more than human. Around 1500 BCE, the building of stone circles in Britain stopped. No one knows exactly why. The Bronze Age was well established. New burial practices had emerged. New gods, perhaps, or new ways of approaching the old ones. Stonehenge was still visited. Offerings were still left. The dead were still buried nearby. But the monument was no longer being modified or expanded. It was finished, or it had become something else, a ruin that was ancient even to the people of the Bronze Age, who perhaps no longer fully understood what their ancestors had built or why. The Druids, the priestly class of Celtic Britain, are inseparably associated with Stonehenge in the popular imagination. Druidic ceremonies at the summer solstice have continued there for centuries. But here is the truth. The Druids arrived in Britain around 300 BCE, more than 1,000 years after Stonehenge was completed, and had fallen into disuse. The original builders had no connection to the Druids. Stonehenge was ancient to the Druids. They were as much inheritors of a mystery as we are. They simply decided to make it their own. In the last 30 years, our understanding of Stonehenge has been transformed. We know far more than we did about who built it, when, and from where they came. We know about the healing pilgrimages, the midwinter feasts at Durrington Walls, the long-distance movement of the Bluestones from Wales. Each answer, though, arrives with new questions. The more precisely we date the monument, the more sophisticated its builders appear. The more carefully we study the alignments, the more deliberate they seem. Stonehenge does not become less mysterious as we learn more. It becomes more. The people who built Stonehenge watched the same sky you can see tonight. They saw Orion rise over the eastern horizon in winter. They saw the Pleiades in spring. They saw the sun set in the same place on the same evening every year. And they decided, for reasons we still do not fully understand, to mark those moments in stone. To say here, this is where the light falls. This moment matters. We were here. The stones are still saying it. And the sky above them still delivers the light they were placed to receive, exactly as it always has. The stones are still there tonight, as they were last night, as they will be tomorrow night. Patient, enormous, Cold to the touch and full of a purpose we have not entirely recovered. The solstice sun will rise over the heel stone again in a few months. The moon will perform its 18.6-year dance around the horizon, as it has since long before the first stone was raised. And tonight, beneath that same turning sky, so can you rest, letting the questions settle, letting the stars do what they have always done. Sleep well.